Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here today on a brand new Cabral Concept. Today is episode 2350. Head on over to stephencabral.com/2350 for all of the resources, all of the show notes, the takeaways, and much more. Today's show is going to be on the 2 common practices that damage and dry out and thin your hair. So this is a really important show, and the reason is that I've been doing a lot of work with hair loss and helping people regrow their hair. And I actually never thought that that would become a big part of my practice, simply because that's never something that I've really put out there to people as something like that we could even help with. But since we've been doing it for years in our practice, and it's actually become an accelerated problem because of COVID and because of other viral-based issues, that we've just said, listen, this is what we know. This is all the research we have. This is how we're able to help. And so we actually created a web page. I don't know, you may have already checked it out before, but I think it's stephencabral.com/hair-loss. And that is a giant article on everything that we really know to date on why people lose their hair, both men and women, how to regrow it and stop it from thinning and becoming too dry or brittle. So definitely check that out. It's everything that I did to help regrow the hair on the top of my head. You can see my before and after photos there. That was a pretty crazy story going back about 6 months now. So I show you my exact photos as well. But really the whole goal I'm always after is how can we all learn? Literally, like, how can we all learn together? How can we share information? And then how do we get to the underlying root cause? Because if you don't know the underlying root cause, honestly, it's just going to happen again in the future, probably unbeknownst to you as to how to then fix it again. So I go through all of that. I link up different podcasts. I link up the 7 different reasons, basically 6 for women, 1 main reason for men. Both of them are fixable for most people. I do obviously share you the unbiased research on who it's not fixable for. I show you my own lab testing. It's a pretty interesting page. So again, I don't know that we can link it up here today. We're not diagnosing any disease, but I'm not sure if we can. So you could just head on over to stephencabral.com/hair-loss if interested. All right, but today we're going to go over 2 really common things that people are doing every single day that is absolutely drying out and damaging your hair. So again, this is for both men and women. And the first one I want to go over, because I want to get right to it, is heat. Heat is one of the most damaging processes to the hair. All right, so let me share with you, why. So any form of high heat, okay, any form of consistent high heat to the head, we're talking about, over 120 degrees, right? Over that, or even like 120 degrees out, really direct sunlight. That could, but that's more chronic based. So here's what happens, then I'll give you, where people are typically most exposed to this, because you don't need to change your whole life. Just a couple simple practices will honestly help protect your hair. So what happens is when your hair is exposed to high heat, it actually changes the keratin. And I won't go into the alpha and the different types of keratin, but the higher the heat, the more it degrades the keratin. So what essentially does is it means that the hair is going to start to break down its own proteins. So your skin is made of proteins, your hair is made of proteins. Not the only thing it's made of, but certainly there are proteins there that can be damaged. They can be damaged as we age, but it accelerates the process, of course, with high heat. So we start to lose the elasticity because the proteins inside the hair start to get damaged. And again, it's not just about collagen, it's about the overall strength of the proteins in the hair. Collagen might be part of it, for sure. It can help. So What it also does is it strips the hair of a lot of the oil. So that's not today's podcast. I'm going to do a separate podcast on different like oil-based heat protectants for the hair. So those could be very helpful. I just don't want to do that on this show. I just want to give you the how-to, and then we'll do a separate show on, hey, these are the best products that I've seen work for helping to help with dry, damaged hair, but also to help protect it from heat. So I'll give you a couple actually for heat for today, but just not the heat protective today, because we need to go a little bit deeper on that topic. So we're worried about high heat of breaking down proteins in the hair, breaking down the keratin, stripping the hair of oil. And what happens is it starts to make the hair more dry or drier and more brittle. And when that happens, it's more susceptible to breakage. So basically, you can start to get split ends, loose ends, and you can actually just get breakage of hair, not necessarily from the follicle. So I should probably explain that as well. When you have hair loss, you can have hair loss from the hair, three ways. So the hair can start to thin out and lose its density, right? Lose its proteins, its keratin, its strength. So then the hair becomes a little bit more limp and lifeless, right? So that's one. The second one, and that's part of the oil-based process as well. The second one is that it can actually break off. And it breaks not actually from the follicle coming out, but the hair actually breaks, right? So you get a piece of the hair, but there's still a small piece of hair attached to the follicle. And the last piece is the follicle actually falls out with the hair. That's more damaging, of course. You need to, if you can, regrow the follicle and then start from there. That's not an ideal, but that does happen as part of the anagen, telogen, catagen-based phases that I've spoken about before. And again, I explain them at stevencabral.com/hair-loss. If you really want to go in depth, it just depends on how deep you want to go. So over time, during this process of high heat, the hair becomes thinner, it becomes weaker, it becomes more lifeless, and again, chronic use just exacerbates this. So any one exposure, two exposures, probably not a big deal unless it was like super high heat, and then it might actually be a problem. So again, with most things in life, it's a filling up of the rain barrel. So it's like, how often is your hair exposed to this high heat? Well, let's go over the two most common places where your hair would be exposed to high heat. The first one is with daily use or near daily use of a hair dryer on high heat. So not just women, but also men blow dry their hair, and many of them who blow dry their hair because they might be trying to make it straighter or flatter or just dry it in general. The high heat can actually damage the hair, and that's very well scientifically researched and clinically proven. So we have to be really careful about that. So again, you say, well, I don't want to give up my hair dryer. I totally understand. What can we do differently then? We can set it to a warm or a cooler setting. So we don't want high heat. We don't want like big heat in general. We want either medium heat. I know it'll take a little longer probably to dry out the hair, or a cooler setting if you're able to use it. I know most people aren't going to be able to use the cool setting on a hair dryer, but you just don't want to go high heat. And then what also helps is the further that heat source is away from the hair, the less damage it will create. All right. And then the last part is that do not keep the hair dryer concentrated on any one section for too long. So if you can actually keep the hair dryer moving, you're less likely to damage that hair. So first thing, try to turn down the heat. Usually on a hair dryer, I think there's a couple different settings at least. I don't have hair that would probably do well with a hair dryer. I think it's probably dry enough just in general. But you want to be able to set it. I've seen them before. You can definitely do a lighter setting on that heat. Make sure that it's a little further away, as far away as possible, for you to still get the job done. And the last part, keep that hair dryer moving around so it's not heating one section of the hair and damaging it for too long. All right. So that's one. And besides hair dryer, why don't I just add to that a flat iron or some type of curling iron, or what do they call them? Curling wands, right? So something like that. It just, again, it's high heat. So the higher the heat, the more the more results you may get, but the more damage there could be in the long run. So if you already have dry hair, if you already have thinner hair, you have to be more conscious of this. If you have kind of that thick, lustrous, kapha-based hair, maybe not as much of a worry, but still, I would be cognizant of it. It's just kapha hair types typically have more oil in their hair. They typically have thicker hair, more resilient-based hair, and so they're able just to get away with it to a greater degree. All right, so that's the first part. The second one that you might be exposed to high heat is a sauna. So remember, if you are going in a sauna and it is not one of the ones where you pop your head out, I have all my favorite saunas at stephencabral.com/resources, all the ones that I personally have used and use to this day. One of them is the head out sauna for infrared sauna. That's amazing. That works really well, and that's one of the least expensive. Then I've used the full spectrum, far, mid, near infrared. And then I have a big, and that one was at my functional medicine and integrative health clinic in Boston. And then that was a beautiful commercial one. And then I have a barrel sauna that I use in Maine. I'm obviously a huge advocate of sweating, right? And that's why we use sauna. So besides all of that, you have to remember that the higher the heat, if your head's inside of it, of course, it can damage the hair. So the reason how this whole podcast came about is I got 100 comments, like a really high amount of comments when I talked about this particular topic, and on Instagram, how I was actually using a sauna hat. If you've never heard about a sauna hat, I will link up the episode where I just reviewed that just a couple weeks ago. So you can head on over to stephencabral.com/2350 for all of today's show notes and links as well. I'll link up the sauna hat. I don't have a hairdryer recommendation for you, but I'll see if I can look one up that has the different modes on it for the different heat-based settings. And what I want to say this though is if you definitely watch the whole sauna hat review, I wear the sauna hat during the video. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for being a part of our YouTube subscriber base. We would love for you to subscribe if you haven't already, and to definitely give it a thumbs up if you could. So here's what I want to share with you though, is that these sauna hats, they actually do protect the hair from high heat, especially if you're using something like a barrel sauna where it's 180 degrees potentially when you're in there. And the higher you are up in it, the more your hair is being damaged. In infrared sauna, even though it's lower heat, you're often in there for quite a period of time as well. So I'm typically, if I do an infrared sauna, I'm typically at 140 degrees for like 40 minutes. And if I do a barrel sauna, I'm at like 180 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes. So that's how I'm doing that. And obviously the high heat sauna is going to be even more damaging. So before I had my sauna hat, I would wrap my head in a towel, or I would just put the towel over my head. So that's certainly something you can do. But the wool sauna hat, and they're not super expensive either. The wool sauna hat, which is a Finnish hat or Russian-based sauna hat, has been used for hundreds of years. And so what happens is when you put it on, it's fairly big. It will trap a pocket of cooler air under the hat, and then your hair will be protected from that. So pretty impressive. They're just made of felt or wool. You can even dampen it if you'd like, get a little water, a little damp if you prefer. So that is that. So I kind of lump both of those together, flat irons, hair dryer, curling iron, as well as a sauna. And then the second most common or second common practice that people are doing is exposing their hair to chlorine. Now, you might say, well, I don't swim in a chlorinated pool. Just keep in mind, almost all municipalities, almost all cities and towns' water have chlorine in them. And the reason they have chlorine in them is to actually kill bacteria. So obviously that's a good thing, right? So when I went overseas, I was at one clinic in India, and I couldn't trust the water source. Like I just couldn't trust the water source. I didn't have easy access to bottled water. So what I did was I actually put chlorine tablets in my water. Obviously, I don't want any chlorine in my body. I just want to say that up front. But I also don't want Giardia, or I don't want some type of bacteria where then I'm out, my internship is just gone because I'm obviously have some serious GI issues. So what I did was I got a open water bottle, basically a big jug, big pitcher container, put it in there, let it dissolve, and the chlorine would eventually it would do its job, and then it would evaporate out. Anyway, you can use iodine, you can use chlorine, etc. But the problem is this, and obviously, back in the US, I'm drinking spring water, or I'm drinking my filtered water. So the problem is that even though a lot of people they drink bottled water, or maybe they drink filtered water at their home, what they do is they still maybe swim in a chlorinated pool, or they take baths where their hair is being exposed to the tap water, or they take a shower. And, again, most people are taking a shower and they're being exposed to all of that chlorine. That chlorine will do the same exact type of damage that the high heat will, just in a different way. So the chlorine is going to damage the proteins, damage the keratin. It's going to dry out your scalp, could potentially cause flaking of the scalp, dry skin on the scalp. It's going to dry out the hair, causing it to become dry, brittle, and damaged. It can even discolor your hair, which is different than heat. So chlorinated hair can actually make the hair lighter, right? But can also give it a little bit of that greenish tint if anybody's ever done kind of pool swimming before and they have lighter brown or blonde hair. So important to look at those two factors. They're both fairly easy to get around, but they cause massive damage. So if you're able to just put that hair dryer on a lower heat setting, or better yet, not use it if you don't need it, or only a couple days a week if you can. The second one is put on a sauna hat, right? Or just wrap that head in a towel. Make sure your hair is not exposed. And then for the last one, use a water filter, not just for your drinking water, but use it for your shower, use it for your bath, for your kids or yourself as well. All of my resources from amazing companies from around the world are at stephencabral.com/resources. I probably have 50 to 100 products that I use in my life and I've used in my practice now for well over 10, 20 years. So it's just an accumulation of things that I recommend, that I use. I love supporting other great companies, so you can check them out there. Hopefully today's show was helpful. I'm going to put everything in the show notes today. So head on over to stephencabral.com/2350. If this was helpful, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Take care. Have an amazing day. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only two ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.